Okay. We ready to rock? All right, everybody ready? Yes. A little more enthusiasm would be nice. I know it's 5. Thank you. I know it's 5 p.m. And let me first start by saying it's been a long conference, 23,000 people. It's a Wednesday at 5 p.m. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being here. Thank you very much for yourselves for being here. Yeah, thank you. And I know I'm standing between you and beer somewhere. Okay? So let's have fun, get through this, and hopefully you'll get something out of it. Okay. All right. So, I love interactive sessions. So if you have a question at any time, raise your hand. Let's have a good time. Okay? All right. With that, let's get going. So, yes, I look exactly like that. There's my Twitter handle, my Facebook, and I don't do much with Facebook, but there's my LinkedIn and my Twitter, and I should probably put my email address up there. I'll put my email address up at the end. If you have any questions about what we're about to talk about, let me know. Okay? Any. All right? Happy to chat. Okay? Let's dive in. Let me give you some background, okay? Because when I put this together, I wanted to ask you guys some questions. Why are you at this session? Not at the conference. Why are you at this session? So let me give you some background. For the last 12 to 18 months, we've been doing some big data hackathons around the globe, right? We've been to South Africa and Russia and London, and I'll be in New York this weekend. So we've done about, holy cow, dozen, 14 big data hackathons, right? These are 36-hour straight hour event, right? And we talk HD Insight. These are big data technology, HD Insight, machine learning, Power BI, okay? And we don't, for the purposes of these hackathons, we don't discriminate who comes, right? Anybody. So we send invitations out to the .NET user groups, to the SQL Server user groups. How many SQL people here? This is a SQL session, so I would bet most of you. .NET? Okay, yeah, a lot of you wear the same hat, right? So we would send invitations out and invite everybody, right? Microsoft and non-Microsoft, right? We'd meetup.com, right? You can find out, data science user groups, Hadoop user groups, machine learning user groups, okay? But what we found was that the majority of the attendees, who do you think they were? The SQL group, right? Why? Right? What's that? It's all about data. Who are the data stewards? You, right? You're the data stewards. So when I started putting this session together thinking, as things move, as we talk big data, and as we talk about Internet of Things specifically, right? If you're a DBA, who knows what the role of the DBA is going to be in the next 5 to 10 years, right? But there's still going to be a need for a data steward. True? Yeah, absolutely, right? So if you're a DBA, if you own data, get on the bandwagon or get left behind. That's essentially it, right? So you need, you want to advance your career, right? That's probably one. You want to know, hey, how do I, not that you're stuck, but how do I, start learning new things, advance my career? But number two, and maybe more importantly, you not only want, but you need to learn these technologies, right? So the purpose of this session today is for me to help you understand that this stuff is not scary, right? We are SQL people. I was one of the first 4 SQL Azure MVPs before I joined Microsoft, right? And then they rolled that into the SQL Server MVP program, right? I get SQL. You get SQL, right? We understand SQL Server, right? But that stuff, as long as they just made some significant announcements around SQL Server 2016, that stuff's not going away anytime soon. But these big data technologies, you need to understand because it's going to affect how you do your job. Okay? Right? So it's not scary. So the purpose of this session is to help you understand what are some of these technologies and how do you work with them. Okay? And to help you understand that, good, this is awesome stuff, right? And that it's not that scary. It's pretty easy. Okay? Are we good with that? Awesome. Okay. So so what I'm going to do is probably spend the first 10 minutes, I hate sessions where they slide deck you to death, but I have a few slides and run through some demos. And if the demo gods are favorable, we'll have some awesome, awesome demos, right? Okay, so I'm plugged in, hardwired. Cross your fingers. Okay, so some of these slides I think you've seen before, but what I want to do is build the foundation about why we're talking about this, right? Who's seen this slide before? Right, a couple of you. All right. So what this basically paints is, look, Microsoft is probably the most, has the most prolific data services of any company in the world, right? And they capture and manage, visualize and decide, and transform and analyze, right? Whatever technology, if you look at the Azure, you guys who's familiar with Azure, right? You go log into the Azure portal, you see this whole list of services, right? Big data, relational, non-relational, things like that. We have this whole list of data services to help you capture and manage your data. Visualize, decide, Power BI, right? Start getting deeper insights into your data. Transform and analyze, right? Machine learning, event hubs, Storm and Stream Analytics, things like that, right? This whole set, right? And so if you look at this, you're like, holy crap, right? This is a lot, okay? But if you start boiling that down to things like, hey, how does that, as a SQL guy, how does that, because you know, most of us aren't going to crack open Power BI. Most of us aren't going to open machine learning, right? So if we start, you know, sizing this down to something that's more manageable, something that we understand, things that we're going to talk about today, it really boils down to just a few of them, right? This is what we're going to talk about today. This is our agenda, right? So we're going to talk HD Insight, and why does it affect our job? We're going to talk non-relational. Why are we going to talk non-relational? We'll get to that, right? We're going to talk streaming. Assad will come up in a little bit and talk Storm. Okay, we are going to talk, you know, data movement and things like that, right? Things that a SQL person needs to understand. Okay, we good with that? So let's go. All right. So let's talk big data first. Let's build this foundation about big data. Why are you here? Why are we concerned about big data? And it's all about the V's, right? What are the V's? Volumes. You guys have seen this slide before, right? Right. Volume. Okay, we're going to get to volume in a minute. I've got some volume slides, right? But it's all about volume, right? There's statistics about how much data exists in the intersphere web thing out there, right? Data is just being generated, and I've got some statistics for you that we'll share, okay? So volume's one, and we know, you know and I know that there's just a ton of data out there, and it's not just relational. We're SQL people. It's not just relational, okay? It's coming from IoT, sensors, and things like that, okay? So volume's one. What's the next one? Variety. Thank you. Velocity is the next one, okay? Volume, variety, and velocity. We know, it's just not relational, right? And we sit there, for SQL people, we understand, hey, rows and columns, it's pretty static, right? But we can't stop there, right? Look, we got to get on the bandwagon because data is coming in. We call real time. This is what Storm and Stream Analytics is all about, man. Getting that data in and how fast we need to understand and start processing that data, right? Because at some point, it's going to hit our database, right? We need to be aware of that. Right? So how fast, that's velocity, man. There's just, you know, we look at the numbers, the data is being generated left and right. We need to understand that and how fast we need to capture and manage that data, right? And then just varieties. So let's play a little game, okay? Kilo, mega, giga, tera, right? We understand terabytes as SQL people. What's next? Huh? Peta? Okay. What's next? Huh? No. Exa? Okay, what's next? Okay, Zeta's next. Right? What's next? Yeah, most people don't know that, but Yoda, right? So if you want to remember that, right? Much data we will have. Right? Thank you very much. I am not applying for, right? All right. But there's, you know, what's interesting, I'll get to this in a minute, there's actually more, right? And what does this tell you? This is scary. This is scary large data. If we're the fact that we talk right now, SQL Server, we're talking terabytes and petabytes, but we're already talking yottabytes. How many zeros is after that first one, right? That's a lot of data. And the fact that they're already in 2000, I got this information from a column that was only like a couple years ago. So in like 2013, they're already talking yottabytes, right? Yoda, but they're already talking. So by 2015, this should give you an idea of how your job is going to shape as a DBA or whatever they're going to call it in 5 to 10 years, right? How your job is going to shape with dealing with data, right? Just to give you an idea, right? So in 2012 or 11, right? They said there would be 7.9 zettabytes. So remember going back to zettabytes, right? Let's go back. Oh, too far. Zettabytes, right? That's a lot. So about 8 zettabytes of data by this year, right? And if they were to take that analysis again, that number is probably low. Okay? That's a lot of data, right? Let's look at this, for example. Okay? Bing itself ingests over 7 petabytes of data a month, right? And when we say ingest, that's search engine, that's the searches you type in, that's the search results that came back, that's metadata about where you were searching from, things like that, right? That's significant. That's a lot of data a month. And then Twitter is over 1 terabyte of tweets per day. And you're all going, yep, I contribute to that, right? That's still a lot of data, okay? I've got some interesting facts here. So let's look at some more interesting facts. I'm going to pull out my cheat sheet here for a second. Okay. So there's some interesting facts, right? What do you think about that? 72 hours of video are uploaded per minute on YouTube. That's 1 terabyte every 4 minutes. Okay? This is mind-blowing. Okay? 500 terabytes of new data per day are ingested in Facebook databases. Right? I'm never on Facebook. I'm not a Facebook guy, right? But my wife is. Right? That's still a lot of data. Sensors from Boeing, a Boeing jet engine, create 20 terabytes of data every hour. Okay? And so I've got, if you want my slides, I've got a link to this last bullet point here. They're building this new telescope. It's called the Square Kilometer Array Telescope, right? This will do I think it's a square kilometer in the sky and generate a few exabytes of data per day. It's basically going to allow us to look back into the future like millions of years, right? It's this super giant, but that 1 kilometer array that it's going to narrow down in will generate exabytes of data per day, right? This should tell you the kind of data in the world we're living in. It's just, it's another interesting fun fact. When Neil Armstrong went to the moon in 1969, how much memory was required to get Neil Armstrong to the moon? Anybody know? 64K. Thank you. 64K of Fortran. Fortran. Anybody Fortran developers here? Sorry, anybody would want to admit they're a Fortran developer today? Okay. 64 kilobits of Fortran. Yet, anybody Halo gamers here? Right? Health messages in Halo alone. Halo, the game, generate gigabytes of data per second. Per second. Yet, we sent man to the moon and back 64 kilobytes of RAM, right? It's just insane, crazy, right? So fun facts, right? So remember I said that the Yoda bytes, right? Anybody know what's after Yoda bytes? Close. Yeah. Right? Okay. To put it in terms of DVDs, so how much does a DVD hold? Yeah. Yeah, 4.7 gig or something like that, right? A Yoda byte would require 250 trillion DVDs. Okay? Right. Okay, so, but we have to think bigger. So let me put this in perspective. I'm going to see if I can say this name right. Shantanu Gupta, a director of connected intelligence systems at Intel, coined these 2 new terms, right? And it's not, what did you say? It's not Bronto bytes. It is Bronto bytes. I was going to say Dino bytes, but it is Bronto bytes. Yes, you're right, Bronto bytes, right? That's 1 followed by 27 zeros. Okay? What's after Bronto bytes? Geobytes, right? That is 10 to the power of 30. Okay? All right, so fun fact. So what we're going to do now is start getting into the reason you're here, right? But this is, again, the whole purpose of this. There's a ton of data, and we have to deal with that. Okay, all right. So when we look at this, we start looking at this. How do we start working with big data? Okay, what do we do with big data? So Hadoop users, right? If we look at this, we have to go, holy cow, the whole purpose of Hadoop is to say, let me do mass transaction processing of data, right? It's processing at scale, okay? This is what Hadoop is. But if we look at this, we sort of get overwhelmed at, holy cow, look at all these technologies. Do I have to do all of this, right? That's like that the slide we saw a few minutes ago of all of our services, right? But what we want to do is say, what affects you as a SQL guy, a SQL person, right? What technologies do we need to know as a SQL person to start working with this massive amounts of data we just learned about, right? We don't need to know all of these, right? So if we look at this, the red's the core Hadoop. Hadoop is just this mass processing, right? Hortonworks, Cloudera, these guys create Hadoops, right? Hortonworks is Apache Hadoop. And it's the ability to say mass processing, distribute my workload across just hundreds and hundreds of nodes if I need to, right? So get that processing down from days to even minutes if we need to, right? That's Hadoop, right? So we got the core Hadoop is the red, the data processing is the blues, we got Pig and Hive, and I have no idea who came up with these names, right? But Pig and Hive, there's Shark, there's Scoop, there's things like that, right? Then you got our integration into Microsoft, right? So event integration, things like Storm and Stream Analytics and Event Hub and things like that, right? Then we have data movement, right? So we got Mahout for machine learning, Graph, Pegasus. We're not going to talk any of those, but what we're going to do is let's narrow that down and say what affects you and how do you start working with all these big data technologies. And it really boils down to this, right? Which makes it much more easier to understand and comprehend, right? And we're going to talk about 4 of these, right? We're going to talk Scoop, we're going to talk Hive, we're going to talk HBase, and then we're not going to talk Pig, but we are going to talk data movement from Storm, okay? So, but we are going to talk HDFS and MapReduce because this is, hey, data is really, I've got relational database, but as we talked about the variety, there's non-relational data. So we're going to talk about these technologies and how they affect you and how do you work with them, and it's not scary, right? We good with that? Okay, go. All right. So let's begin with HD Insight. Okay, anybody know what HD Insight is? What is HD Insight? Microsoft guys can't answer this question. Yeah, thank you. All right, so it is. It's Microsoft's Hadoop offering as a service in Azure, right? This is the ability. So on-prem, if you were to do this on premises with a Hortonworks cluster, you'd have to buy all this hardware up front and install HD Insight or Hadoop on it, right? Where in HD Insight, this is a service-based Hadoop. Brings 100% Apache Hadoop running on Microsoft Azure, and to scale, it's just if you've seen all of Microsoft solutions, it's let me move that slider from however many nodes to hundreds of nodes if I need to, right? To get that scale, and we handle all of that for you. Okay, how does that have to do with us? Well, technically, as a SQL person, you may touch this, right? But again, scale on demand. The way it's going to affect you is that we need to understand how Hadoop differences between SQL Server and Hadoop. Because you're still going to touch this, but it helps to understand kind of the differences, right? SQL people, we understand. Rows, columns, right? Interactive batch. You don't do things one row at a time. You update where. You do things in a batch, right? Schemas are static. You create a table, there it is, right? It's kept there, and you do. It's read and write many times. It's a SQL Server, OLTP transaction database, right? This is what it's for, right? Relational database, high ACID, right? We get that, okay? Nonlinear scale, we understand that, right? We understand SQL, but how does Hadoop differ from this, right? This is a little different. Gigabytes and terabytes, SQL Server can, if you start scaling, can scale up to gigabytes and terabytes, and maybe a little, there's probably some, up to hexabytes and things like that, right? But this is, their access is batch, right? This is, we're dealing with mass amounts of data. All those hexabytes and dinobytes and zettabytes, this is what Hadoop was made for, because we're taking that mass amounts of data and processing that data. And it is not an OLTP system. It is not. We need to understand that. This is you write once, and I'll show you how to write. This is write once, but you read many, 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 many times, right? If you're writing to Hadoop, you're doing something wrong, right? This is mass processing of data, okay? And we're going to walk you through this kind of an end-to-end scenario, right? Low ACID, but it does give you linear scalability. That's move that slider from however many nodes to thousands of nodes, right, and back if you need it, okay? Does this make sense? right? Good. All right. So in terms of storage, and we're going to jump out and do a demo. In terms of storage, if you're familiar with Hadoop, Hadoop has this thing called the Hadoop distributed file system. When you create a Hadoop cluster, basically the Hadoop distributed file system resides on those machines, right? For Azure, right, when we create, remember what HD Insight is, this is Hadoop as a service. From a cost perspective, it still has a HDFS layer, but if you were to tear down that cluster, you lose that HDFS, right? So best practice states don't store your data there. Where do you store your data? Hey, let's put it in Azure Blob Storage, because if you tear down your cluster, your data still exists, right? And we'll walk you through how that works, right? So this is Hadoop. This is HD Insight. We're taking this. We're saying, data nodes, commodity hardware. This allows us to spin up from one node to hundreds of nodes, if we need thousands of nodes, if we need to, and back down, right? Okay, we good with that? So let's jump out and do some demos. All right, and cross your fingers that the interweb is working. All right, cool. Let me jump out and switch here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is this. From a demo perspective, I'm sort of going to demo these. It's kind of backwards. So I'm going to start with HD Insight, go to Scoop, go to Hive, Scoop, Storm. Really, if we understand how this affects your role and job as a DBA, really, things are going to be coming, and we understand the whole Internet of Things. Data is going to be coming in to us, right? It'll be hitting, data sensors will be coming through Azure Storm or Azure Analysis. Stream Analytics, just drew a blank there. Stream Analytics, that data will come in, data will probably hit our relational database. This is why we need to understand that stuff, right? It comes in, that data is streaming in real time or near real time. We're storing that somewhere, either in blob storage or in a relational database, right? And then we're going to use Hadoop to consume that Scoop to move that data up to HD Insight, and then use HD Insight to process that data, right? That's really how things would work, right? And then we'll process that data and throw Power BI in front of that to visualize that data, or we may shove that data out to a data warehouse like SQL Data Warehouse or things like that, right? We're sort of going to kind of go backwards to help you understand how these sort of things fit together from a relational standpoint, okay? Just so you guys understand. All right, so let's jump out. What I'm going to do is the first demo is very simple, 100 level, how to create an HD Insight cluster, right? And I'll show you several ways to do that. So I've got my Azure portal here, right? And this is right here, this is HD Insight. You guys can see that. I've already got several clusters here. There's my Hadoop cluster, and there's an H-based cluster, okay? Right? It's like those cooking shows. I'm going to walk you through, but then say, hey, I've already got one, right? So we are going to go into that. And like I said earlier, we could easily scale this by going configuration or scale. I'm already at 8 nodes. I can't go anymore because I'm limited to the number of cores. But depending on your subscription, you can go all the way out. And it's just a matter of going, all right, I don't need that many. Let's drop down and click save, right? Okay. Configuration is kind of interesting. What's interesting here is this allows you to, and I'm going to show you this in a minute, allows you to RDP into the head node. So the first thing you want to do is once you provision your cluster, and I'll show you why in one of the demos, you want to enable remote access, right? And when you do that, it just asks you what's your username and password and how long you want to enable your remote access for, okay? Definitely want to do that, okay? Well, let me walk you through a very simple example. So, and I see people do this, and from my perspective, I never do a quick create, okay? I never do that, right? I always do a custom create, because if you do a quick create, it just gives you the cluster name, the cluster size, and the username and password, right? But if you want to RDP into the head node, you have to specify the password, username and password for that, and other additional information. So I always do a custom create, right? And it allows me to choose a little more information, right? So I'm going to call it, let's call it Ignite HDI cluster. I want a Hadoop. I want it on Windows Server. We now support Linux, right? And I want the latest one. Yep, 2.2, right? And then it says, all right, how many nodes I want. So here there's 4 cores per node, so this is going to take 16 core. Plus you have to add in the 4 cores for the head node, right? So when you start doing the math for your cores, right, you know that this is going to take 20 cores, okay? Out of your allotment of cores. Where do I want to put it? What's my head node size? What's my data node size? And here's, oops. Yeah, it's going to bark at me because I can't go any smaller. Yeah. And then, you know what? I'm out of course. So what it does is it allows you to put in a username and password so that you can RDP into that. And at that point, and it also says the next step says what storage account do you want to use. Please create your HD Insight cluster and your storage account in the same data center, just for performance reasons. Then enter a username and password and click OK, right? I'm not going to do that because I already have one here, okay? But that's how easy it is to create a cluster. Now, at the same time, who's PowerShell people? You guys know PowerShell? Awesome, right? PowerShell, the easiest way to do this is through PowerShell, right? And we're going to run through several examples through PowerShell. But this is how easy it is to create an HD Insight cluster in PowerShell. You're basically specifying the same information that you did in the wizard, right? Where's my storage account name, what's my container name, my cluster name, my password for RDPing into the head node, the cluster admin password. How many cluster nodes do I want? And then specify the storage account, get the storage account information, the username and password, and then create my cluster, right? So I got what? About 10 lines of code to create an HD Insight cluster, right? So without opening a portal, I just run this, and it creates my cluster for me, right? And I also have a similar one to when I'm done. And best practice states, when you're not using your cluster, you definitely want to tear that down. And it's simple. You know, that's only a few more lines of code, right? 1, 2, 3 lines of code to tear down your, right? You can go to the portal and say delete, right? But for those who like to do management and automation of your cluster creation, right, this is how easy it is. Now, why did we cover this? Well, because everything we're going to do from here out touches HD Insight, right? So as a DBA, as a SQL person, you may start touching this. You want to become familiar with how Hadoop works, right? Beyond this, beyond going into the portal, there really isn't a whole lot you can do here. But we are going to come in from here, and we are going to go into the query console, right? Because this is where you come in to play a little bit more, okay? Make sense? So you want to become very familiar with HD Insight because as a SQL person, we start dealing with these big data technologies. HD Insight and Hadoop is going to be a very big part of what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. Okay? We good with that? All right. Let's keep going. All right, very simple example, but again, we had to show that because Hive touches this, Scoop touches this, Storm touches this, everything else, HBase touches this. Everything we do touches HD Insight, essentially. All right, let's keep going. All right. So we just did, come on. We just did our demo. So let's go. So now that we have our cluster going, how do we start working with this, right? So we could easily do all of this through .NET if we wanted to, right? We can create our cluster. There's SDKs out there if we wanted to create. There's Java, but we're going to touch some of these. We're going to touch Hive, Scoop, Storm, some of these, right? But see, these things are, once I've got my HD Insight cluster, these are the technologies that we're going to touch with, start playing with, right? But let's talk Hive, right? And at this point, this is more demo than anything else, okay? All right, so what is Hive, right? Hive is the ability to say, I want to start querying. It's kind of like, it says a data warehouse infrastructure built on top of Hadoop, right? What this allows us to do is write T-SQL query-like syntax to query and get insight into our zettabytes of data, our petabytes of data, right? And remember, what's awesome about this is that our data could be anything. Remember the variety we talked about? Relational, non-relational, NoSQL, could be coming from anywhere. But what Hive allows us to do is write T-SQL-like statements to query all that data, to query non-relational data. Okay? That makes sense? So it's really just, hey, select star from, right? Create table, insert into. This is what Hive allows us to do. So as data starts coming in and you want to start understanding these big data technologies, Hive SQL is your best friend because you can now start querying any type of data using T-SQL. Who likes T-SQL? Yeah, everybody, every hand better be going up, right? Yeah, every hand, thank you. Right? But again, using languages that we already know, great, we can start querying terabytes and petabytes and zettabytes and yottabytes and brontobytes of data using languages we already know, right? So, demo time. All right, so let's jump out and let's show you a demo. All right, so let's go. We're going to go back into that portal, and we're going to click on the query console, right? This is, I like this because this just says, hey, kind of what's going on from how many cores we're using, linked resources, so you can see linked resource down there. That's the, when I created my cluster, I said link this to this storage account because when I query my data, it's going to be pulling from there, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click query console, right? This is why I never do quick create, because when you do custom, it says what's your username and password for logging into the query console, right? So if you do quick create, right? So do custom create and enter that username and password. All right, so we'll do my username, and hopefully I got my password right. Okay. Oh, I didn't get it right. You know, the downside of this is that you have to, for some dumb reason, all right, let's do this again. Any questions so far? None? I know it's 5:30, but all right, let's try this again. All right, we're going to go into my Hadoop cluster. We will dashboard. We'll go into query console. Oh, SQL Scott. Oh. Okay, come on. Son of a gun. That's my password. All right, I'm going to try this one more time. Otherwise, this demo is going to... I even wrote the password down right there. Oh, sorry, I know what it is. Sorry. That's my password. I know what that password is. My bad, sorry. Too many passwords. All right, let's do this again. All right. So now that you've seen my password, I'll be changing my password after this. All right. Woohoo! Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so what we're going to do here now is there's some interesting things here, and we're going to actually come back to the couple things I want to point out here. And this is where use a DBA, this is where you're going to live, right? When you're dealing with big data and you start processing jobs and things like that and start consuming some of this data, right, and moving data, this is where you're going to live, right? So if you go to job history, we're going to come back to the job history in the next demo, right? Because this is an interesting one. But you'll notice, and I did this on purpose, I had a job fail. I'm going to show you why in a minute. But as you start going, start working with big data technologies, especially Hadoop and Scoop and things like that, and Hive, this is where you're going to live, okay? But what we're going to do here is we're going to go to the Hive editor, okay? Because I'm going to show you how easy it is. Because, what I want to do here is I want to Azure Management Studio. We spell it right? Right? So let me give you some background, and I want to understand, so let's paint this picture, right? So let's pretend that we've just, used and it just starts consuming a ton of data, okay? What I have is, so remember when I created my HC Insight cluster, I pointed it to Azure Storage, right? And Azure Storage says, I've got data, I'm collecting that data, and I'm putting that in here. So I point it to HCI example, and I've got this file here, and this file is 11 meg. But what I'm doing, let me show you this file. It's not that big. I meant to have this up. It is in projects, hackathons, London datasets. Okay, it's this file, this abbreviated file, because typically it's, I didn't, just for purposes to make it for demo purposes, but this file, let's open this in WordPad, right? This has, all it is, so what I did is I went and got London Tube train station information, right? Entry and exit, okay? I took a subset of that, because instead of processing a one, just to make it run quick, right? And there are 266,000 rows in this database, or in this file, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this file. And what I did is I uploaded this file to Azure Blob Storage, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a query now to actually query this data, okay? And it's going to be a T-SQL type of data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into in my portal. I'm going to open up, pull my data from my query from here. And again, very simple, right? So I'm going to take this, and simply I'm just going to paste it here, okay? And call this test, okay? But look at this, right? So this essentially is T-SQL, is it not? Pretty close, right? What does it say? Drop table station. Hey, that's T-SQL. And then what I'm doing is I'm creating a table, okay? Now, what was the difference between HD Insight, Hadoop, and SQL Server, right? So if we notice here, it says create table. So I'm just saying, the column name and the data type, right? There's no primary keys, right? But this is a standard T-SQL create table statement, is it not? Right, pretty close. Now, but there's other things that are in here that say, hey, row format delimited terminated by. So basically, I'm saying, look, the field the data I'm processing, it's column delimited. It's a comma delimited text file, right? Because it says row format delimited field terminated by a comma, so comma delimited text file stored as a text file in that directory in Hadoop, in Azure Storage. Okay, that's all I'm saying, right? And then I'm going to process that, and I'm going to do a select on it. So again, very much T-SQL-like statement. Okay, I don't need the drop table because I haven't run this before, so I'm going to get rid of that. And I got to give it a name. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to say submit. Okay, and what this does is, if you're familiar with it, does a MapReduce job. So also it's taking it's taking that data out of storage, distributing that data across all my data nodes, processing that data, right? So imagine if you had just terabytes and terabytes of data, right? Zettabytes of data, okay? So I could have just what it's going to do is basically take that data and execute a job. Take that data, distribute all that data across all those nodes, right? So instead of taking, SQL Server one box, hundreds of hours, this could probably take several minutes, okay? Does that make sense? Right? So again, here's the power. Again, we're using T-SQL statements that you already know, right? And what it's going to do is it's going to run and give me the results back. Okay? Now, the difference here is it says, one of the things that we don't have is it says external table. Why is it external? Anybody know why it says external? What's that? It's not in SQL, right? External means the data stays where it is, right? The data is left in the original state, right? So what we're doing is it's not actually creating a physical structure table in HD Insight, right? It's basically just kind of in HD Insight, it's creating a table, but it's not creating a row column like you see in SQL Server, right? The data stays where it's at. Does that make sense? Yes. Yep, so all the data is in that CSV file, right? The data stays where it's at, right? All we're doing is we're saying, oh, okay, Hadoop, just create a structure for us, and sort of the data we want is in this format, right? We still sort of say drop table, because that table exists, but it's not kind of a row column scenario, okay? But the data stays where it's at. It will continue to exist in those CSV files, right? All right, this will take a couple seconds, but any questions about that? We good so far? Right? So as you start bringing in this data from Storm or Stream Analytics, right, and into SQL, or moving SQL from here into HD Insight, right, you want to start querying this data. This is how you do it, okay? So again, your best friend, right? Does it make sense? Right? Thoughts? We're good? Yes? I'm sorry, say that again? Hadoop, so Hadoop is not stored. The data is in that CSV file, right? Absolutely. Job. Well, so you're going to continue to process, right? So as data comes in and you want to process that data again, right? You're going to. So what you're asking is, so let's say I run this job and I get the results back, and more data comes in, right? I'm going to need to rerun the job, right? Because it only knows about that, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. Yes. yeah, does the process still apply? Does the same concept still apply? Is that what you're asking? Yeah, yes, concept still applies. Yep. Okay, so the job completed, right? I can go in here and say, all right, well, let me look at it. Right? And there's my data. Okay? There it is. Okay? Now, I said external table, but my data's still in there. It didn't create an external table. It just said, hey, query this zettabytes of data. Give me the data, right? You know, I could have said, there's other, you know, so again, this is a very simple example, but there's other things like I said, hey, insert into this other table or insert into this other file, things like that. There's a lot more I could do, but this just says, hey, it kind of shows the power. I can take all this data, you know, start processing all this data, right? But with you know, again, this was not a SQL, you know, this is not SQL data. I'm taking the non-relational data and processing that data, right? Okay, we will actually come back to that. All right, any other questions? We got to keep going. All right, let's keep going. All right. Yep. So let me keep going. All right. So now, you know, up to this point, what we've done is we've said, hey, created our cluster, showed how easy it was to, you know, write T-SQL against it. You know, not that difficult. Okay. The next step is from a perspective, we want to know, you know, how do we move data in between, you know, not just from SQL, but how do we move kind of relational, non-relational in between? Like, I know SQL. How do I get SQL? How do I get data between SQL and HD Insight, right? So theoretically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stream data into SQL, but I want to get that data either into blob storage or into HD Insight for me to process it. And this is what Scoop does, right? Scoop is simply a command line interface that allows me to transfer data between Hadoop and a relational database, import and export, right? Very simple. Now, it's a command line interface, but for PowerShell people, I can use PowerShell, and it's very simple to do, okay? So let me show you that, okay? This is, again, demo-heavy session. Let me show you how easy it is to do Scoop, okay? Because if you think about that, the process, right? I've got data in my relational database. I may want to move that up to have an HD Insight process. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to here. So let me get rid of these. I don't need these anymore. And let me open Scoop. So I'm going to do a Scoop export first. All right, and let me walk you through this. So Scoop export basically says just a few lines of code, almost the same thing, right? Can you guys see that all right? Okay. So basically what I'm doing is I'm defining what the cluster that has my data, the storage account name, where the data is existing, the container name, right? And I actually don't need that because I don't use that anymore, but I define my SQL. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take data from that file, from HD Insight, and move that into SQL Azure, right? So there's my server name, my login name for my credentials, the database that I'm going to move data into, and the table name that's contained my data. I'm going to create my my connection string to HD Insight, to the Azure SQL Database, and then the export directory. This is where that's going to get my data from, and I'll show you that. And then the Scoop definition, go, right? So I define the job definition. Again, what this is going to do is going to create a MapReduce job, right? And then distribute that MapReduce job across all the nodes in my cluster, and then execute the job, right? Start Azure HD Insight job, okay? Simple as that, okay? So what I want to do here very quickly, I may need to go back here. All right, I didn't have time to do this, so let me make sure that my database is good. Let me go back to servers. Where's my West US? I want to make sure that the IP address is good. 65.193.94. We should be good. So what I'm going to show you here, let me SQL Server Management Studio. Connect to this database in the cloud. Okay, we're good. All right, so let me show you, just so that you know that I'm not doing anything funny. There's my database. Here's my table. And let me show you that there's no data in this table. Okay? All right. No data. Okay? So what I'm going to do here is let me go back and just grab these. Oh, I didn't grab them all. Okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and execute this job. Okay? So I'm going to execute the export. What it's going to do is pull that data from HD Insight that's sitting in Azure Blob Storage down to SQL Server, right? I'm going to execute that. And while this is going, it won't take too long, but while this is going, let me go back, because you're probably you're asking, and as a DBA, you want to know, hey, what happens if something errors? Let me go back to the portal here, right? Let me go back to the job history, and we'll see some jobs that, the two that failed, and we'll see the one that completed, right? So there's the one that's initializing is the one I just kicked off, right? And why is it in HD Insight? Well, again, this is it's an HD Insight job. HD Insight is managing this job, okay? It's executing this across all the nodes, okay? The completed one was the select statement that we just, create table and the select statement, right? But let's go figure out what are those fails, right? So if I want, like, for example, if I export, if I import, if I do something, right, we can look at some of these. So if we go in here and say, hey, let me look at the details of this, okay? Oh, the data output is no longer for this job. Oh, so what it was saying was that hopefully this is still good. Huh, interesting. What it was saying, it said, it would give me a timeout, right? And I'd say, well, why was it timing out, right? So the information here really wasn't that helpful. If I looked in the log here, it would just say, hey, you timed out. But it didn't tell me information, why is it timing out? And as a DBA, you're going, look, I got to figure this out. Well, the great thing about this is that I can now go back to the portal. I can go to my Hadoop, and I can actually go to, let me go to configuration, one of these tabs. Let me connect to the head node. So I can actually RDP into the head node of my cluster. Right? That one. Okay. That's the right password. Okay. Because you're going to want to know, the head node is responsible for keeping track of what's going on in your cluster, right? So what I'm going to do is look to see, why did my job fail? I ran that this morning. I purposely had those fail, but what it said is, hey, I'm timing out. Well, why are you timing out? Tell me what's going on, okay? So what we can do here is is RDP into the head node of my cluster and get a lot more information about what's going on inside my cluster. Why did that job fail? Give me more information other than, hey, it just timed out, okay? Okay, let's go back here. Whoop. And you'll notice, right, what does this say right here, right? Map reduce. So if we continue to watch this, what it's doing is actually creating, it's doing the mapping and distributing that load across all my nodes. So that number will keep going up. It'll go to 39%. Right? It's processing the workload. This will jump up. There's 44%, right? It'll keep going up to 100. It won't take that long. So let's go back here and go back into my head node. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into, so there's all my jobs. I want the one that failed right here. Okay. I want the one that failed. So let me go into the one that failed. Okay. I want to click history. And notice there's all the failed, right? So there's the attempt type. How many attempt types were there and that failed? Let me click on that. Okay. And there's all the ones that failed. Well, what happened, right? So we can click logs. Right? And if we look at this, it tells us exactly why it failed. Right? That's why it failed. When I was testing this, right, and took that log file, I set the string column width to 50 characters, but there were some station names that were bigger than 50 characters, right? But the log file from HD Insight only says, hey, it timed out. But this tells me, hey, something else is going on. I know exactly what's going on now. I can go figure it out. Well, your string or binary data type, we see this all the time, right? SQL people knows that, okay, I'm trying to stuff something longer than the column width is allowing for. So I went and set it to 255, processed right up. Okay? So this is how you go troubleshoot what's going on in your HD Insight cluster. When you're doing scoop or Hive jobs or things like this, this is where you go troubleshoot some of this stuff. Okay, let's go see how our job's doing. We're at 53%. All right, so this shouldn't take too much longer. All right, I'm not gonna wait. What we're gonna do is once it hits 100%, it'll start inserting into my table. Okay, so we can go back here and we can take a look. Nothing's going on here. Right? There's no data. There's no data yet because it's still doing the map reduce stuff. Okay. Okay. Oh, it is inserting rows into here. All right. Let's take a look. All right. So what was it? It was 101,000. So it's actually running the job. Okay. It was 101,000. We should see a little more than that next now. Come on. There we go. We're now at 108,000. So we can see that it is inserting that data and moving that data, right? Now what we can do is, if we want to, we can go and say, let's take a quick look just for time. We can take a quick look at the import, right? I'm not going to import it just for time, but it's just the reverse. What we're doing is we're taking that data now and saying, hey, well, I may want to modify that data, but I'm just doing the reverse. So the key here is I'm saying, which is fun and interesting. The first one said export. If you look at this said export. This one I want to do an import. And where do I want to put it? And the great thing is like when I do this directory doesn't have to exist here. In fact, if you look at this, that HD Insight import does not exist. It will go and actually create, not that. It will actually go and create that directory for me and create the file for me. So again, I got data streaming in. I'm going to take that data and then move that into scoop import to move that into HD Insight. Then I can use HD Insight to start processing this. Is this making sense? Right? Start moving this data. Again, this is SQL, right? All we're doing is, and if you look at the results here, right? When the results are done, it'll actually show you a T-SQL statement that Scoop used to move the data. Okay? Awesome, because again, it's SQL, right? Questions? All right. We doing okay? All right. So let's keep going. All right. What are we doing on time? All right, we've got 20 minutes. Okay. Yeah, I was going to modify data and move it up, but just for time. All right. So Storm. What Storm allows me to do is say, remember we talked about the whole end-to-end scenario. I got data coming from sensors, the whole IoT thing, right? Storm allows us to do that. It is a distributed, fault-tolerant, open source event processing. Bring data in, right? Real time, near real time. Just start streaming data in, right? Bolts and streams, right? Bring data in, and it just allows me to start capturing data real time, near real time, as fast as I can take it, and then do something with that data, right? That data typically going to go into a SQL relational database or into Azure Storage or something like that, right? And then I'm going to move that data somewhere else and then process that with HD Insight. If we take a look at the architecture of that, right? Again, it could be clickstream, machine sensors, server logs. We're going to basically move that into a queuing system. It could be, event hubs or something like that. I'm then going to route that into Storm, and that Storm's going to do that real-time processing for me. And I'm going to take that and either move that into a data store like SQL or HBase or HD Insight or things like that, right? And then start doing something with that data, okay? Why are we talking about this is because, again, you need to understand how we're collecting this data, right? Where's this data coming from, and how do I process this data, right? Now, some of you may not be open to Visual Studio, right? A lot of us wear many hats. We're either developer or DBA, things like that, right? But what this allows us to do is start consuming this data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the time over to Assad. We're going to do a very simple storm demo. Okay? All right. Cool. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to unplug here for a second. So give us a minute. There is the internet.
Okay, thanks.
And here is.
Okay. Hi, everybody. So it's a very simple demo. It's not fancy. Nothing fancy graphs will show up out of this. As Scott was saying, one of the key things to understand is that whatever technologies comes in the big data, they don't exist on their own. Like a lot of people are actually using the old traditional data warehousing technologies with these new technologies. That's why you see the need for Scoop. That's why you see the need for, like, I talk to so many customers and they were like, oh, so what is the BI story on top of Hadoop? Yeah, why don't you extract your data in SQL? Really, if I wanted to do that, why would I use Hadoop? Like, basically, there is still a lot of innovation going on. So there are a lot of companies who are saying, okay, we will go and enable the BI story, or we will enable that thing. But it's still, if you look at it where we stand today, these all technologies have to come together in order to make a solution that works for the actual problem. So this demo is very, very simple. Like, what we wanted to show was that Storm, as Scott was saying, is used for streaming scenarios, whether it is the IoT scenario, or is it like you want to do fraud detection, you want to go and do anything. So this demo just shows that you can go and connect to any stream of data, and then you can push it into SQL very easily. So again, if you remember Scott's slide, basically there is a way you can connect, and then you build your topology, which is the step functions, what you want to go with and do with that data, and then eventually you push it into the SQL. So over here, what I have done is that I have connected to the Twitter API. It will go and connect to Twitter. It will go and look for certain subjects like Microsoft, Ignite, and SQL. And then it has a very simple class which pushes it into the SQL database. So this is the one. As you are familiar with, it will go and create a connection, open the connection. It will take that data and push it in. And this is the database. As you can see, there is nothing in there right now. I will go and build this thing. And on the left of the screen, you will see these are the clusters I have already deployed. This is another way to go and look at your clusters and monitor them rather than going through the website, the Azure website. So I can go and click on it. I can go and deploy it. So one thing you would notice is that Microsoft is investing a lot. Like, even though we are running the open source technologies like Hadoop, and as part of that, like Hive, Storm, HBase, but we go and invest a lot in terms of the productivity. So building the entire VS experience, in order to do that, we also have to enable .NET support for Storm, which does not come out in the open source. So there's a lot we do on top of these open source stacks to make it more productive and then appeal it to more of the Microsoft crowd. So this is, it just got submitted. So if I go and view the topologies, this is my pipeline of data now working, the real time. I can go and kill it. I can continue. It will show me that the data that is coming in, how much data is going into the SQL, how much is going to the BI dashboard. So as soon as any tweet comes in, we can go and search here if anything came here. So these 3 tweets came right now. So anyone who will go and tweet it with that thing, it will go to show up here. So very quickly, like, you have built a ETL pipeline, which is very real time. It is not like, oh, it will wake up every night and do a bulk operation. This is like as the tweets are coming in. So if I refresh, another tweet came in, and this pipeline will continue to sit there. So literally, you can go and run this thing, and it will continue to monitor any new tweet that comes on that subject, and it will push into SQL. And of course, then you can go and build interesting applications on top of it. The one which we built at the stage was the data DVR, which actually shows you the live tweets for build or any. There might not be any build anymore, but like you can go and say the Game of Thrones, and it will show you any Game of Thrones tweets coming in, or you can go on the historical data and pull from there. So let's say if it came in the May 3rd, probably Sunday, it comes at 6. It will go and show all the tweets that happened at that time. So again, whether you look from the SQL perspective, whether you look from how these technologies come together, the key thing to understand is that it is not one or the other. It is a combination of like how you can use Storm, how you can use HBase, how you can use SQL. That's why, like, no matter which project you look at, whether you look at Hive or you look at the Spark and Spark SQL, everyone wants to be like SQL. The only thing they want to change is that, oh, if SQL had any limitation, the relational stores, how we remove that limitation, but how do we go and still appeal to the same crowd? Because the number of people who have trained on it and they know the technologies is a huge set of people. So rather than train new, they all want to go and appeal to those people. So again, very simple demo showing Storm, how it can be connected to SQL, and then you can push the live stream of data coming in there.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Hassan. All right, any questions? So he'll stick around if there's any questions after. All right, let's get back to our demo. All right. Cool. There we go. Let's go back here. All right. So lastly, what I want to do is, I don't need that. I don't think I need that. HBase. And I'm not going to do, and this stopped because we disconnected from the internet. Okay, that's fine. All right, let's go back to here. And what I want to do, I'm not going to do a demo of this just because of time. We only got not too much time left. But let me talk HBase, right? Whenever we talk HBase, anybody know what HBase is? Right? Okay. Let me give you some framework, right? A lot of times when people say NoSQL, as a relational guy, as a relational people, we automatically start freaking out, right? Because it's not relational. No, get it out. Get away, right? It's not relational. But, when we think NoSQL, we think, look, NoSQL, right? But what it really means is it's not only SQL, right? So we have to get into the mindset that, look, just because it's not relational doesn't make it bad, right? And we just saw that in the previous demos, right? I just was able to use T-SQL to query non-relational data, okay? And the whole purpose, and again, the purpose is go, look, it's not that, it's easy, it's not that hard, and it doesn't have to be that scary. So when we talk NoSQL, it doesn't mean, it's got leprosy or anything like that. It means that it's just not only SQL, and we can deal with it in technologies and syntax that we already know, okay? So when we talk HBase, HBase is a open source distributed non-relational database. It's a non-relational database, okay? Column-oriented key value pair, just like Azure Storage, Azure Tables, right? But how do we work with this? Again, this is on Microsoft technologies, okay? What I'm going to do here is there's a technology called, and the reason we're not going to do the demo is because it broke on me, but there's I'm being honest here. So what I like about this, I installed it locally, but I can't access my HBase cluster. But it's kind of interesting. There's a tool out there called Squirrel. Oops, sorry. There's a tool out there called Squirrel. You guys see that all right? Right? What Squirrel allows me to do is write syntax like like this, right? I can write syntax like that in Squirrel and query a non-relational database. Query just like we did in Hive, same thing, but but what I'm querying is a non-relational key value pair store, right? Beautiful, because I'm writing T-SQL statements. I'm writing again using technology that I know that I already know, and I'm writing. I mean, there's the syntax right there. Right? Create database. If it doesn't exist, create database. The only difference is instead of upsert, I'm doing an insert into, and here's the values I'm inserting, and then select star from U.S. population, right? What I'm going to do is, and I really apologize we couldn't get this demo working, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to record it, and if you email me, I'll send you all the demo scripts, right, and the video, right, because I really want to get this working. I just did not have time, okay? But do you understand the power of this? Right, is that I'm writing T-SQL statements to query non-relational data, and again, that non-relational data could be terabytes of data, right? Just like we saw in Hive and HD Insight, okay? So again, there's power in this, and that you guys have already, you all have the technology to use, and it's going to touch you, but it doesn't need to be scary, and you already know the technology that you already know the languages that you know, right, that you're going to use, okay? All right, let me wrap up with this, and then we'll get into questions, okay? Because we only got about a few minutes left. All right, again, I will do the demo. So The whole goal around this is what I wanted to illustrate is that we have these technologies, and you're probably asking, like, why didn't we talk about stream analytics, and why didn't we talk about some of the other technologies? Well, for several reasons, right? One is to say, look, we understand and we support the open source, right? One, as Assad said, right, Storm is a lot more scalable than Stream Analytics, right? It has the, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's got that much better scalability, right, over Stream Analytics. Stream Analytics may get there, right? Why don't we talk about some of our other Azure data services? Well, we're looking at technologies that are not just within Microsoft, right? We're talking about technologies that are just that are going to affect us all from a relational database perspective, right, as a DBA. And if we look at the entire ecosystem of Microsoft, a lot of these technologies stitch an end-to-end scenario, right? We've got data coming in from sensors, from IoT, right? That data is going to come in. We got to be able to process because it's like I said at the very beginning. This data is going to land in our lap, and as data stewards, you have to be able to work with that, right? And it's going to touch every single one of these, right? Hadoop on Windows Server, our data warehousing systems, right? It's going to go into through data transformations and things like that. It's going to be, to pull that open into Power BI and visualize that data to allow get better insights. You guys are the data stewards. How do you deal with this data? And it's not relational, not just relational anymore. All right. So in summary, big data isn't scary. Hopefully, setting expectations. Hopefully, you got out of this that this was not scary. You can use the technology and languages you're already familiar with. Right? Where's the role of the DBA going? Right? This is something you have to think about. Right? This is why you're here at this session. Where's the role of DBA going, and how does all these big data technologies affect you? Right? Start going down that road. All right. Now, some sessions. Assad did a phenomenal, wonderful session earlier today on exactly what he demoed on Azure Storm, much more detailed. I would highlight, if you're interested in this data streaming, view that on channel once it gets posted. Right? There is, there's another session on Hive tomorrow. So some of these are posted. You can download this. Sign up for a free trial. Sign up for a Data Lake preview. Don't forget the Azure Challenge sweepstakes. Right? Lastly, any questions? Does this make sense? I'm very, very interested in your thoughts and feedback. So I will be here for a while. I would very, very much interested in your thoughts and feedback. Yes, question. Does what support on-prem? No, it's Azure only, cloud only. Yep. Well, yeah, Hadoop, Hortonworks is on-prem. Yes. Right, but HC Insight, the Azure service is only in the cloud. All right. All right, thanks everybody for coming. Appreciate it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you want my, so the slide deck will be available. But let me do this because I totally forgot to do this. If you guys want any of the demos or any of the scripts that I have, let me do this. If you email me, let me make this bigger font. Can you guys see that? If you email me, I will send you all my scripts. Right? And I will actually get the HBase thing working and send you that as well. I just did not have time. But if you have questions, I'm very interested in your thoughts and feedback about what you thought about this, so please don't hesitate. Come up, let's chat. But thank you. Appreciate it. Yep.